Hello, my name is AJ Fox. I use they, them pronouns, and I am the Director of Religious Education here at First UU. I wanted to take a minute today and introduce you to one of my favorite children's librarians of all time. Doris Seale was the librarian in the children's department in Brookline, Massachusetts for 45 years, from 1958 until 2003. Doris Seale was born in Brattleboro, Vermont in 1936. She was Santee, Dakota, Abenaki, and Cree. She married a man named Thomas. She was an aunt, and she died in Burlington, Vermont in 2017. And honestly, being a children's librarian for 45 years is enough to make me love almost anyone. But that's not really the reason I love Doris Seale, nor the reason we're talking about her today. Doris Seale wrote a book, the book, on navigating children's books and curricula portraying Native people, on reading children's literature with a critical eye, on holding children's literature to the reasonable standard of creating a visible presence for Native Americans and portraying history adequately. The big book that she co-edited was called A Broken Flute, The Native Experience in Books for Children, that was published in 2005. The book was revolutionary for the tone and clarity it brought to the conversation surrounding the handling and depiction of Native Americans in children's literature. She was one of the major first voices to help question the Thanksgiving narrative and to help libraries and schools really look at what they were intentionally and unintentionally teaching. She was one of the first people to bring the conversation about cultural appropriation to the national conversation through her writing and resources. A Broken Flute is a huge 463-page book, but Doris Seale also co-wrote How to Tell the Difference, a guide for evaluating children's books for anti-Indian bias that was much more digestible and is widely available. This is a follow-up set of criteria. She did her work through an organization called Oyate, which she co-founded. First, Seale and her co-authors create some very basic criteria. Does the book have stereotypical pictures or depictions of Native people? Beyond the basic criteria of avoiding racist and simplistic depictions, beyond asking for basic dignity and portrayal as real living people, then the criteria goes further, and it puts a lot of responsibility on librarians, teachers, educators, and parents and caregivers to do the work. The follow-up criteria that went deeper asks about the author's relationship with the stories, the author's way of knowing the cultures they are depicting, and the author's ability to depict the origin and significance of the story. These criteria are available online for all of us to read. They're about 4 or 5 pages long. This was radical stuff 30 years ago. To be honest, some of this is radical stuff now. Doris Seale was part of bringing this whole conversation forward, and she did it with this directness, candor, and grace. She lived out these values of justice. One of my favorite stories about her. In 2001, she won the American Library Association, that's the ALA, and that's like the biggest library association in the United States. It's the association, right? She won the ALA's Equality Award for her work. That year, the ALA's meeting was held at the Marriott Hotel in San Francisco. And it just so happened that the Marriott Hotel was having a labor dispute with their workers at that moment. Faced with the chance to walk in and receive an award that was on the other side of the picket line, Doris Seale chose to instead join the picket line. She spent her entire life checking out children's books to the children of Brookline, Massachusetts, and simultaneously managed to write out some really solid criteria for justice and for evaluating for cultural appropriation. The thing is, Doris Seale was doing this work 20, 30, 40 years ago, and for educational settings. And now we, especially those of us looking for stories to bring us meaning and values in a religious setting, are being asked to look at the next layer of cultural appropriation, the next layer of dismantling the way we touch and handle that which is around us, that which belonged to cultures long before. Thank goodness we have had incredible people like Doris Seale and her contemporaries to show us the way to navigate these struggles.